What do you think?
I think we're dead meat. Real dead meat.
You dead meat!
Go ahead and laugh, you guys. If I ever find a little bastards that did this, they're dead meat.
Welcome to the Dead Meat Podcast, an extension of the YouTube channel Dead Meat. I'm James.
I'm Chelsea, and we're engaged, and we like to get scared together. We are continuing our creature feature summer. That's the theme I decided on for summer, because I don't know, there's like murder hornets, you know?
Yeah.
It's 2020, so if we haven't all been eaten by the murder hornets. We're talking about murder ants this week, giant ants. We're gonna review the movie Them, and we're joined by a very special guest this week, Ivotres Littles. Hi.
Hi.
You may know her on social media, at least as Horror Movies and Beyond. You're a fellow horror fan. We met at a convention through a friend of ours, also a guest of the podcast, John Masari. I asked you if you would come on to review a creature movie with us, though, and asked if you had any suggestions, and you said the movie Them. Is that like one of your favorites, or is it just like a favorite creature movie, or?
Oh my goodness, there's so many creature movies. So the reason I chose Them was because it was one of those underrated, like you don't really hear about them. No one really, Godzillas, King Kongs, spiders, tarantulas, 50-foot tall woman. I mean, mutants. I mean, it's the norm. But you don't really talk about giant ants. It's not really something, a conversation piece. And it is fantastic. And it got good reviews at the theater when it opened. So, but I was surprised. It's kind of like the back burner. It was great, but let's move on. It kind of opened the door for more mutant movies.
Yeah, and I think, too, from what I gather, this movie was one of the first kind of, at least American giant creature movies, because this is like the giant creature movie, which we haven't talked about a ton on the podcast yet, because I'm not as familiar with that era, but I'm trying to learn more about it for this summer. It's very atomic era America and fear of science gone wrong, and it's easy to forget, like, as much as we have this really misplaced nostalgia for especially the 1950s, was just like an everyday, maybe today the nukes are gonna come for us.
You are the target of those who would trample the liberties of free men. You are in the crosshairs of the bomb sight. An enemy is centering on you. You are a citizen of the free world, a citizen of the United States of America.
I think in the movie they say, like 9 years ago we tested the atomic bomb in the desert?
This is less than a decade out from the atomic weaponry being used.
1945. That's 9 years ago. Yes, genetically, it's certainly possible.
Like, it's that thing that is such a far removed thing from our lives and experiences that is just history. But these people were like, 9 years ago, we dropped an atomic bomb or two, and we're dealing with that fallout, which is insane.
Yeah, that I think is even a whole genre of its own, is horror that takes place in the American West, like in the desert. Because, like, I think if Hills Have Eyes is also atomic testing and stuff, and aliens like Roswell. And so, like, the American West is just this weird hotbed for all kinds of anxiety and stuff, because we did all of our weirdo testing there. Yeah. So you said you saw this when you were little.
The first time I saw it when I was little. I can't picture how young I was, or I don't know, but I know it was very young. And it was at the time where I started watching a lot of horror movies, all kinds, and it scared me because I couldn't understand how something that small could get that big. And then I watched it again, and then I watched it again, and I was like, this is great. This is really classic horror. Like, they decided, you know what? We're going to just let's make something huge and something. And you know what's really scary about that? When I was in school, they could carry their, 10 times or 20 times their own weight. And I was like, if it's that big, if it's the size of a Buick, we're like gone.
Yeah. Yes, I had that thought at the beginning of the movie. I was like, wait a minute, ants are like super strong, and they talk about that in the movie too, which was one of my favorite parts. Where they were
the
like,
footage of like real ants doing stuff.
And he's like, we're gonna watch a short film, and I was like, oh my gosh, what kind of short film did this scientist make? But it was like way more normal than I kind of was hoping it would be. I was joking, it should have been like a giant ants and you kind of 50s industrial movie.
We've learned that one of these quarter-inch long insects can lift 20 times its own weight. And that's equal to one of you lifting 1.5 tons or more.
You know, before they showed you the size, what I really liked, they showed you how small they are when they were on top of the sugar. So you can get the full effect of something that took, not even, less than a decade to get that big, because of mutation and whatnot. And I was like, that's really genius. Because if they just brought a big spider, oh my God. and they couldn't, I think visually as an audience, you couldn't put it like, okay, that's great. But to show the size of it from small to gigantic was a really clever idea. I think they did.
Yeah, that's great to get a baseline in.
Yeah.
And I also love how, it's when they're examining like the crime scene of that store that's been broken out of, I guess. And there's sugar on the ground and there's all these ants in it. And the guy like runs his hands through it. And he's like just sifting his hands through sugar and ants. It's like, that's some good police work, I guess.
That's like a Beetlejuice dessert. That's like what Beetlejuice has after dinner is like sugar with ants all over it. Yeah, I think there's something to be said about the idea that we're surrounded at all times by insects. Like, I forget what the number is of how many insects
like
there are per person on Earth. It's a horrifying
or probably
number.
Trillions. I guess it's kind of like the birds also in the regard of like it's taking these everyday little animals that we forget about because they're so commonplace and surrounding us and turning them into a threat. Only unlike the birds, this one does make them giant mutant versions of that animal.
Fun cast of this movie. Everyone in this is just like a cigar chomping 50s actor, which I love a lot. So many fun performances in this. Although at a certain point, I think there were a few shots where it was all the main cast in a room and they're all just like these kind of tall white dudes in hats. And I'm like, I can't tell any of them apart.
I know. I was like these
this.
all just look like 50s leading dudes.
Yeah. And the one woman, this poor woman, Pat.
I know. I love how each character is taking their job very seriously.
Oh, yeah.
It is like, this is not a comedy. This is not funny. This is our lives. We're being overrun by these gigantic ants. And if they get loose, oh my God, within a year, we're going to be overrun and dead.
Yeah.
The extinction of the human race.
End of the world. Yeah. I wonder if, and again, this is like not a subgenre I'm as familiar with, but this concept of like in this movie, the entire world is at stake. I wonder if it's these kind of mid-century sci-fi horror movies where you're starting to get the stakes are the world. Because I think before then, when you think of like Frankenstein or like the stakes are not, he's like gonna villages. Destroy the world. Yeah, it's like a German village, I think. But I think before the atomic era, the concept of the entire world being destroyed wasn't feasible. But now it's like, I'm become death, destroy. Like we've created a weapon that could, So I think that's when we start getting and we kind of never gone back from that. I think that
slashers kind of bring it back
that's
down
true.
to the
Slashers
local level.
bring it back, but I just mean like it's still now like our biggest movies that come out today are superhero movies where it is literally the universe at stake. Like
I think after World War II, I guess that kind of like, okay, we're being attacked, and what happens with all this toxic waste and atomic bombs and nuclear strikes, what happened? What are the results? And then we start getting those movies where we actually see people all messed up, or bugs, or Godzillas and the giant moths and things like that. So and then it just kept going. But at that time, right before, like many years before then, they've had all the movies of Frankenstein, they had all the movies of vampires and werewolves, and it kind of got tired throughout the 40s. So that was, them was kind of like the start of a new era of horror. So it really, really brought people back to the theaters, which is cool.
Yeah.
And I think something interesting that you said earlier was that, everyone's so serious about their jobs. I actually went into this movie expecting it to be more campy, more like a B movie, because it has an exclamation point in the title. It's them, exclamation mark, and it's about giant ants. So I'm just expecting some like really schlocky movie that would be like referenced in Rocky Horror Picture Show, like one of those movies. Credits for sure. Yeah, but instead it's like a very straightforward, played straight film where it almost becomes a police procedural at one point because one, it moves at a faster pace than I expected.
Oh yeah,
because they're talking about when they find the giant ants and then they find the hole where they came out of in the desert. They're like, we might have to go into their nest, and I was like, this movie better go into that ant nest by the end of it. They went into that thing like 10 minutes later, halfway through the movie, and then the rest of it is like, now we have to track down these ants that are on the runaway. And so I just love that it was played so straight and like took itself so seriously.
So watching this and a couple weeks ago, I just watched Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and I'm always surprised by how like snappy and how quick these 50s sci-fi horror movies feel, because it's easy to maybe at first judgment think, it's going to be a bit slow. It's a black and white movie. It's a 50s movie. But these are just pure entertainment. These are not like art films. We're not experimenting with film and the concept of film, and maybe even like maybe 60s and 70s I start thinking of, we have films where we're slowing down a bit and really taking our time, and there may be more character studies, which I love. It's like my favorite. But these are just moving at a clip. They're so fun. These are just plot. Yeah, they're just plot. Like I would love to go to a drive-in and watch this.
Oh yeah.
These are so fun.
Yeah, they get to the point very quickly.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is the situation. Oh my God, we got to save mankind. Let's do this. Oh my God, we got to find every gun, bazooka, everything we could find.
Yeah. There's so many bazookas and flamethrowers in this.
And I love the little hat pats, or the head pats that they do to like signal that it's okay to fire the bazooka. It's like, it looks like, oh, good job, guy. You're firing a big gun.
Hey, taking a quick break to recommend another podcast you all should be listening to right now, Guide to the Unknown. It's another horror podcast hosted by siblings Kristen Anderson and Will Rogers. They discuss pop culture, urban legends, and the paranormal, which we don't really talk about too much, like real life paranormal stuff anyway, on the Dead Meat podcast. So if that's what you're looking for, this is the place for you. Recent episodes include a tour of all of the different haunted mansions at all the Disney parks around the world. The one in France, in Paris, is particularly weird. They go to a seance at a paranormal bookstore, and they talk about the real-life story behind The Conjuring. So the Warrens, and yes, the Raggedy Ann doll that is Annabelle in real life. New episodes every Friday on all your major podcast apps, including Spotify, and they record live every Wednesday at 6 Eastern. Then if you miss it, the video is released on Friday alongside the podcast itself. And again, that's live recordings every Wednesday at 6 Eastern on youtube.com/talkbomb, TALKBOMB, and then the video and podcast are later released on Friday. So go to gttupod.com for all the links to enjoy the show, and follow at gttupod everywhere on social media. And I'll put all the links in the description below. All right, back to the show. The thing that I love about these movies too is if it's a movie about giant ants, we're not doing the thing where, oh, it's scarier if you don't see them. No, we're showing you the giant ants. They kind of look shitty. It's fun. You're gonna see the ants. You're gonna see like way more of them than you even want to. It's so fun.
There's probably within like 28 minutes to 30 minutes, like it gives you a whole tease. Like you see like the trailer destroyed, you see the store destroyed. It's like, what is this? But there's sugar. Like who's stealing sugar? And you don't think something that big, and then Pat, she's just looking around in the desert. All of a sudden you hear the noise, it's like
cicadas kind of. I think the beginning setup of this is so great, though. And it is genuinely terrifying where they realize that this trailer and this general store that have been smashed apart, they realize, oh, this wasn't a break-in. This was a break-out by something. And that is so scary. Like, what the hell? I love it. I think it's such good table setting.
Yes, it is.
And it's also kind of all kicked off by that little girl they find wandering through the desert who I thought would be a bigger part of the movie, but they just kind of drop her after she says them a whole bunch.
She says it. She says the title.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this little girl's going to be helping them figure this all out. Nope, dropped her after 15 minutes.
But that girl was terrified. You saw the fear in her face. And what I thought was really interesting was that, when they put her, they kept talking to her and stuff like that. And they finally let's get the paramedics to get her out of there. And when she was laying in there and then that noise happened, she rose like Dracula.
Yeah.
With this terrifying fear on her face. I was like, I don't want to know what she saw.
Yeah.
I love how they don't even notice it because they're also looking towards the noise.
We
and she's
should notice it, but they're looking this way and we're like, look at the girl.
She's very creepy looking. She looks like a Village of the Damned kind of little kid.
Yeah.
She just needs the glowing eyes.
She's the first of a few kid actors because the end of the movie involves finding those two little boys in the LA sewer system, and one of those boys
is acting his heart out,
and the other one don't give a fuck.
Are we done? When's lunch? It's great. I love it. Moments like that really make this for me. The actor who plays the FBI agent,
the tall dude,
the very tall guy.
The other guy had to wear lifts in his shoes, I guess. The other actor,
because the FBI agent was just so tall. That actor,
James Arnaz.
Yes,
he's the FBI agent. He was in Gunsmoke. Before Pat can even get out of the plane, he's already flirting with her.
Oh my God. Yeah, they see her legs and they're like, oh my God.
Get to the office first before you're like, yeah, baby.
God, this poor woman. She's a doctor. And I just want to, so what happens is, so we got New Mexico desert. We know there's ants. They call in this doctor and his daughter, who's also a doctor. And they get out of this plane.
The Doctor's Medford.
Yeah, the Doctor's Medford. They get out of this plane, and this woman's skirt gets kind of caught on the ladder she's climbing down, and all the men are just, cartoon eyes. And just keep in mind, she's a doctor here to do doctor stuff.
Hey, her dad is super respectful. He defers to her.
Dude, her dad rules.
Her dad is my
him.
favorite character.
Yeah.
He's a very, he reminds me of a Disney dad. Like
Belle's dad.
Yeah, he has a relationship with her. Yeah, it reminds me of Maurice and Belle, where he's like,
crazy old
Maurice.
Like
he treats her like she's his equal and defers to her. And I think it's very cute. I love daddy-daughter stuff. It's very nice. But my favorite is, I have the line written down. She is talking to the FBI agent and she reintroduces herself. She's like, I'm Dr. I forget what her what is
Medford.
it? Medford. I'm Dr. Medford. She says to the FBI agent who's been flirting with her hard, if doctor bothers you, you can just call me Pat. And I'm screaming like, no, you earned that, girl, no. And he goes, yeah, I like to. It is the worst. This poor woman spent how many years?
Hey, she's into him, man.
She's know, but still,
him.
you can still call her doctor.
She's the kind that takes care of sick people. I think I'll get a fever real quick.
That's another thing, too, that is so fascinating about this era of film is it is truly that, these are American movies. This is the most American horror flick I've watched in a bit, where America, even though we do address the fact that, yes, we invented the atomic bomb and we tested it in our own desert, it never really feels like it's anyone's fault in this. We're not, the villain is still the giant ants. The villain is not necessarily man, although we do get a nice line at the end.
When man entered the atomic age, he opened a door into a new world. What we'll eventually find in that new world, nobody can predict.
Meanwhile, it's the government and everything. We're still the good guys. We got the giant ants. Great. We're not going to address the root of this issue at all. But we got rid of the ants that are under LA, so we're good.
But the whole time, him and his daughter never really told them that it could be ants. They were kind of like little, like ambiguous about everything. They just didn't want to tell him, oh, it could be this. Well, we have to find this. We have to test this. We have to make sure. I have to make sure it is this. And I was like, well, why don't you just tell them already?
Yeah, their plane is so close to the chest.
Yeah. I mean, fair, I guess. Because, God, I just think of the guy, and this was one of my favorite scenes because the actor is just so great. He actually later went on to play Disney's Davy Crockett. There's a man they go visit who's in a mental hospital who saw all these giant ants and he's yelling about the ants. So they put him in the loony bin, of course. And so they go, the FBI agent and Pat go visit him, and he's like, you guys don't think I'm crazy, right? I saw these giant ants. And of course they believe him, and that's what they wanted to hear. But then they go and the FBI agent tells the doctor who's supervising him, yeah, this guy's nuts. Leave him in here.
I'm convinced he's trying to pull a publicity stunt with this weird story.
Well, that's why your government would appreciate it if you kept him here, so he doesn't get any publicity.
The government?
He's to have absolutely no visitors. And if any information is given out about him, Washington will hold you responsible, Doctor.
I was laughing. I was like, it's pretty messed up. Poor guy.
It's so messed up. But I was like, classic FBI dude. That's why the doctors are playing that pretty close to their chest, I think.
Well, at this point, they're trying to find the queens. Like, they know there's two queens.
Yeah.
Or three or something like that. And they're trying to find them. And they could have spread it. But it seemed like the time span of them looking was like 5 months. Because they had said, oh, it could be 5 months. And I was like, 5 months?
Yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden they've got all these flags on the map.
Yeah, it is great to, and again, this speaks to like, oh God, the stakes in this now are the entire world. I wasn't sure the scale, like what the scale of this was going to be, because the beginning it's just, okay, there's this big ant hole, this ant mound in the desert. So I'm like, are we just going to be in the New Mexico desert the entire time? But then it's amazing how quickly it's like, get out the maps. We have to go find all these ants that might have flown around the entire U.S.
Do you remember the part when they went to the anthill? This is like a little bit when they finally went to do all the bazookas, and then the one ant that came out holding like a rib cage, and drops it, and then you see the cop, one of the cops who went looking for it, you see his like badge and stuff, and I was like, wow, that's pretty messed up. And the bones and stuff were like picked clean.
Oh my God,
those bones were,
the giant ants are Antifa, confirmed.
They picked them clean. They waste nothing. And I was like, yeah, okay.
The ant with like the rib cage and its mandibles felt very original Star Wars to me. I don't know why. It felt very like Sarlacc, just kind of. And also that when they go into that first ant mound and they're just tossing grenades into it, it felt like a Monty Python bit. It reminded me of like the holy hand grenade part of Holy Grail, where there's the little rabbit and they're just tossing explosives.
And they did cyanide. It was like, throw that in there too. I was like, safety? And then their outfits were just like flimsy. Like
yeah. When they get to LA later, they're like, can't we just gas the sewers? And they're like, no, we're under a city where people live. You cannot gas the sewers here.
That's like a Joker plan for Batman. Is like, I'm just gonna, or like, it literally is the Scarecrow's plan in Batman Begins is I'm gonna put fear gas in the sewers and like no, this is a Batman villain plan. You can't do this. Although I loved all the footage of the LA River. Something, and if you're not from LA or not familiar with the LA River, it's a river, quote unquote. If you've seen the movie Grease, they drive around in there and drive. So if I feel like if you live in LA and you see the LA River often, it is a weird fantasy. I think everyone has fantasized about driving in that thing at least once, because it would be such a fast way to just cut across LA and there's banked corners and stuff. Like, oh, I just want to drive down that thing. So what I love is people who make movies in LA. It's like, okay, it's a movie. It's our fantasy world. We can do anything. Oh my God, we're going to drive in the LA River. We finally get to do it. I think the city stuff is just the Warner Brothers lot.
Oh,
guessing.
yeah,
Yeah.
the streets they're driving.
Definitely yeah.
Remember when they start doing like, okay, now we got to warn everybody, crash course of the ants and what they do, and then that's when they show them two little ants like fighting for like 72 hours.
Ants are savage, ruthless, and courageous fighters. This fight lasted 72 hours between those two alone.
Are they
Ant
married?
fights.
Like, are they brother and sister? I mean, they were like wrestling with each other.
I know.
72 hours. I'm like, how and why?
Kind of want to get a fact check on some of the stuff that they
I
said
do
in that
too.
because like
Weird 50s science, I
I'm
don't
like,
trust.
okay, how much of that still holds up? You know,
I just think
70 years
of,
later.
yeah, like mid-century science. I just think of what they thought T-Rexes looked like. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't
Upright with-
trust any of this.
Because they mentioned the queen, after one mating session can lay eggs for like 15 to 17 years or something.
Yeah.
Like,
That doesn't sound 100% accurate. Can you imagine if that was human? Like,
contraceptives would have been invented long before they were, if
Yeah.
that were the case. It's like, we need to stop this.
Yeah, and that whole they talk about they're like, oh, ants are basically natural warriors. Besides humans, they are creatures that purposely seek out war and enslave each other, and they're just this warrior race of bugs. And I think if this movie's made today, or even like, a decade or two later, I think there's not a side plot. I think there's another conflict here where the government is like, well, why do we gotta destroy them? Can't we use them for weapons?
Can we capture them and
Yes.
drop them into Moscow?
Exactly. Yeah, like why don't we just fly some queens over to Russia? And I'm shocked that it didn't go there, but also I think the portrayal of the government in this is pretty benevolent. And like,
Oh, yeah.
everyone's on the same side. We got science and the military for the most part working together. They butt heads a little bit, but it's not anything crucial to the plot. Speaking of, I just want to mention it before I forget. Leonard Nimoy shows up in this. I did not see. I was looking for him.
he was the remember the part where they were like put out the special bulletin to see if they find anything unusual, and then they had the list. And they had it there forever, so you could read every single thing, and most of it was serious. But when it got to strange phenomenals, flying saucers, strange odors, high-pitched sounds, and unnatural things alive or dead, I was like, well, that's fun.
Yeah.
But he was the sergeant who grabbed the SOS and handed it to the lady, and she stamped it. That was him. But he was profiled, so...
Yeah.
I think if it was dead on, I think we would remember the features of him that young. Like, oh, that's
so
who
wild.
that is. That's Spock right there.
Yeah, weird too that I mentioned Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He's also in the remake of that.
The 78 one.
Yeah.
So it was very quick, but from there, remember when they got like the first telegram?
Oh my God, that scene on the ship.
And then you see the ship.
Yes.
It was like chaos everywhere.
I think that moment got the biggest laugh out of us, and I think that's when we were totally sold on this as a movie, was the cut to the ship. Yeah, the guy just tapping out Morse code while there's an ant over the side of the ship just like chewing his shipmate apart.
I know, you see like all this chaos behind him, and I mean, you see the shadows, and then you see one trying to shoot, and he gets like grabbed around the waist, and then all of a sudden it cuts back to him, and you just see it crashing through, and and then you hear that famous Wilhelm scream.
Yes. Multiple times.
Yeah, used 3 times in this movie.
On Wikipedia, it says that the Wilhelm scream was like it was just created right before this movie came out. So it's so weird how that scream now really stands out, but back then, and no one would have noticed that they used the same sound effect 3 times, I don't think, because now
I
it's
don't
so
know, man. I
distinct.
feel like even a 50s audience is gonna hear that 3 times and be like, wait a minute. Was that wow! Like, what was that? That was pretty, I think I heard that before.
And then it just went to where they just sunk the ship. It was like, we don't need it.
Yeah, they're like, okay, we're just gonna sink this and not talk about that anymore.
Yeah. Good
Straight
stuff.
to the point. That's how it is. There's no time to waste. We just get rid of it. It's just one less ship. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
And there's some moments in this movie where I was like, man, this is kind of like recent events because
Yes.
one, they try to like snuff out the ants in the desert, and the scientist is like, it's too late. We didn't act fast enough to put down this threat, and now it's gonna spread throughout the world.
Oh,
I was like,
man.
okay, and then like the first place it spreads to is a ship, and like they have to like lock
Yes.
that down, and then the army comes to LA and drives their Jeeps through the streets.
Yeah,
and I was
there's a
like,
curfew.
what the fuck is going on
Yeah.
in this movie, man?
There's like a press conference. There's a curfew in LA.
Oh, yeah,
But
they instate a curfew,
Yeah,
and
I
then
was
the
like,
army
oh,
comes.
shit. Yeah, it's so weird watching this movie where, again, it's the 50s. We're not questioning the U.S. government. The U.S. government's there to protect us. Military's like, we've all agreed to that social contract, So everyone in this movie is like, oh my gosh, yeah, all right.
I will
time
go
to-
home
I will
because of
go-
that
yes,
command
for
and stay
America.
safe for America. And now we know that these people would be
People
like,
would be like, I'm gonna tame the ants and ride them. You can't tell me what to do.
But at the same time, they still trying to find where these queens are at, or these other ants are at. And then they come across, was it a train car that got broken into or something
yeah.
like that? 40 tons of sugar. And the guy was like, what am I going to do with some hot sugar?
Oh my god, yes, my favorite side character in this whole movie.
dude, that guy is great.
There's a lot of very good minor characters in this. Yeah, that guy is like, he's the guard of this train yard where okay, I have a problem with he claims he didn't even hear the ant.
Those ants are
They're
loud as
huge.
shit.
They're so big.
They're so loud. All they do all
Like,
day is that annoying
cicada
ass noise. It's so
Like-
piercing.
Yeah, I didn't get that. No one hears it. No one sees it. No one did anything. And I'm just like, really?
I mean, they're a bit off base when they think like, oh, someone paid you off to let them break into. But I think the ants paid him off. The ants paid him off because they're so loud. Something had, it's fishy.
They was
And
like,
then
you
it
don't
gets still
see
shady.
nothing. See, I got this.
Yeah, he hands him like a dollar bill with his little antenna. But yeah, this guy, he's getting interviewed by the cops, and his accent is just wonderful. He's like, sugar.
Hot sugar.
What kind of sense does that make? Is sugar a rare cargo? Is there a black market for it? Did you ever hear of a fence for hot sugar?
Never heard of no fence for sugar.
Yeah, if I'm casting him now, if I remake this, which I'm going to, if I remake this, he's John C. Reilly.
Okay. And then the alcoholic who screams that he wants to be made a sheriff.
Make me a sergeant, charge the booze! Make me a sergeant and charge the booze!
Jensen.
That guy. Yeah, that's Bill Murray.
Bill Murray, for
Yeah.
sure. That guy's such a Bill Murray character. Favorite stock character type of mine is just movie bum. Like,
Oh, the two drunks.
it's like a hobo clown kind of thing where it's like they don't really exist, really. But like a movie bum is one of my favorite little like
and
tropes
around
or
that
characters.
time is when they found a mutilated body.
Yeah.
It was like his arm was missing, things were missing, and 2 kids were missing. It was like, whatever. You got another drink? I'm just like,
yeah, I
what?
didn't see nothing.
Yeah, do you have a favorite side character? Because I have one that we haven't mentioned yet, but there were so many in this movie.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go. In the drunk tank, the guy
Yes.
that they tell me what you see, and he wanted to, like, you think you mentioned it earlier. He wanted to join the army, but they won't let him, and then he cover himself up. You can't make me do it. It's like, do you want to do it or do you not want to do it? Actually, really, I thought he was funny. I really like that character.
Oh yeah,
Where he's
great.
been laying there for months and it's like, oh yeah, I see giant ants outside every day. What about
And he was like, 5 months. And then that's when I was like,
Oh yeah,
5
yeah, that's
months?
right.
They've been looking for this. And no one's seen anything.
I like the woman that they pulled in for questioning
Yes.
because she had run a red light,
Oh,
but it was
yeah.
because she was like returning home from a married guy who she was sleeping with. It was just like a throwaway line. I was like,
that?
Oh, okay.
That scene is so funny. I love again like a mid-centuries trope of like a floozy. This dumb blonde.
Gee, all I did was go through a red light.
At 60 miles an hour. Was something chasing you?
No, I was just in a hurry to get home.
When they started to figure out, okay, where were this whole crime mystery thing of where these 2 kids were when they came up missing. It was like, where are they at? They over here, they over there. And then you see them go through this whole thing of trying to figure out where were those kids last seen. And then it ends up in the storm drain, or
I guess they're just chilling. Yeah. I was hoping, and again, this is my version of them, which is absolute chaos. I know they're going to find these kids, like they have to. I think it would be weird, especially for a 50s movie, if they introduce like, oh, there's 2 missing kids, and they find, in a 50s movie, you can't just like find 2 dead kids. That's not a thing. But I was like, I hope they find these kids and they've been taken in by the ants, and they're like ant boys. They're like feral ant kids raised by wolves, but they've been like raised by the giant ants. That's what I want. But
yeah,
no.
that would be. I could see that.
You know how like after animals, you always see videos of like, oh, this cat just had kittens and she also adopted this baby duck that didn't have a mom, because there's something that happens when an animal gives birth. They're like brain chemicals. Everything is like their baby, you know, because they're just like,
Oh yeah, it's like the queen.
the
ant
queen. Yeah, the
just
queen is
adopts
like, oh,
two
these are
boys.
my babies, and they're just sitting in the nest when they come in.
Be really cool if they can make that noise too. That
Yeah.
sound from them is like, wait, well, what are they saying? Oh, they said leave them alone. How did you know that?
Oh my god. Amazing.
That would be pretty cool. And then now we have to bring the entire army, the military, the Navy, whatever they can find to go in there.
It's
to look for these kids.
Yeah, it's like every branch of the military coming in to destroy these ants. It's quite amazing. It's funny too that there are really, now that I think about it, there's not many obstacles for our main characters. Like, it's pretty much a procedural, like you mentioned, James, where it's like, okay, we have a problem. We're going to get the military on board and the police, the government, everyone, and we're going to solve this. And okay, we solved it. We found them. All right, light them up, boys. Like, just fucking flamethrower these ants to death.
We laughed so hard at the end when they like find the newly hatched queens, the ant princesses, as they call them. And Dr. Medford's like, yep, they haven't gotten away, so when these are destroyed, that'll be the end of it. And then immediately the guy's just like,
Okay, burn them up.
and it just fires their fucking flamethrowers. It's just not a pause or anything to reflect on the moment.
Yeah, to reflect on like, wow, science, or just this is what has man wrought upon this earth. It's like, okay, burn them up, boys. And they just fucking light these things up. Oh,
And then
God,
as they're
Eli.
in there, they're just like looking around, and then all of a sudden they hear this weird clicking sound, which I thought was kind of I was waiting for the normal ant noises that it was making, but it was just like this click, 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 click. And I was like, is that okay? Maybe it's the boys trying to find,
Yeah.
no, it just happened to be, they're just standing there. Once he get in there, it's like, boys, come here. And then you see those ant mandibles coming through. It's like, I expect him to last all the way through.
Yes, our FBI agent
No, it's the
Or,
cop.
I'm sorry, the cop. Yeah, the cop dies for his country in the mandibles of this giant ant. Yeah, I wasn't expecting him to die either. I was actually kind of shocked that we had a kind of main character.
Yeah, main character go out.
Because everyone else dying in this is just random people.
And that guy has what I think is the funniest scene that's meant to be funny, because okay, burn him up is the fucking
The
funniest thing
best,
ever.
yeah.
But when they're on the helicopter and it's that like kind of jokey exchange where the Dr. Medford doesn't know how to end his transmissions.
Have you found anything yet?
Say over.
I just said it.
I know, say it again.
Over.
And the guy keeps having to correct him. It's like an intentionally funny scene that is still hilarious because like it's not over the top acting, or it's not like, it's just played so dry and the lines are delivered like it's great, and they're not being like total dicks to each other.
Yeah.
He's just like casually being like, no, I know you have to say it again.
What I love about all those interactions is because it happens a couple times. You have like them on the helicopter where the doctor doesn't understand how the radios work, and then you also have the doctor not putting on his goggles the right way.
Oh yeah, they were like halfway.
Yeah. And there's so many scenes of this where I'm like, is this in the script? Like, it just almost feels like the actor being like, no, dude, you got to put it on this way. And he's adjusting it. And it feels like they just kept it in.
And the sergeant, when he got trapped in those mandibles, you see the sheer size of the ant. At that moment, you see how it's just, I thought he was going to get away. When I was like, when I watched it the second time, I was like, oh, he got away. Because I didn't remember what happened. But it was like, he's just screaming and hollering. But then you could just see it just grab him up in the air. But when it let him go, it was like, nah, that's it, man.
Yeah. R.I.P.
And then it just went to a whole, like, once everybody got in there, it just went to like a straight finale. All guns blazing, blowtorch, whatever they could find, it just went for it. And I thought that was just the most climactic scene I've ever.
Yes. It really feels like it reminds me of, you know, like you think of like little boys in the 50s growing up playing like cops and robbers, or, you know, they maybe fantasize about being like a sheriff or something, or like an Old West, you know, and this really feels like, oh, in this moment, I see everyone making this movie, the men making this and the men in this scene. I see them being the little boys that, like, I know they still are, where they're like, okay, we're going to use all of the bazookas in this.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a bazooka.
Or the way
Everyone
they like
gets a flame
run around shooting while still running, just like all flippantly. It is a
very like pretend play. I know it's a bunch of grown ass adults making this and acting in it, but I see the little kids that still exist in there just playing, you know, fantasy make believe. It's a lot of fun. It
definitely was a whole lot of fun. But what was interesting about that is when all this stuff is happening under the city and no one knows, they're just going by their day to day, like everything else. But there's like this whole war zone is happening right in these sewers. And it's like, wow. And even through all the bazookas and everything, it didn't destroy anything else. It just landed on the ant, blew it away, and that's it. Like, it didn't take down the whole town, the whole city. I was like, wow, these are some very specific bazooka bullets just to get the ant.
Yeah, it's like this idea of, because they discuss how, like, oh, the ants are a result of this nuclear fallout because we've been testing in the desert, and yet we're able to just clean up our mistake like very neatly, very clean. There's no fallout from that. We're able to just tie up all these loose ends because we're America. Like, that's what we do. We fix problems, and even if we caused that.
Yeah, it's just like more of that simplistic stuff from the where they're not dealing with like how the public reacts to these orders.
Yeah.
And they're not dealing with like how the government might want to use a nefarious ants for other purposes. Like, it's like
it really is like the American hive mind of the 50s, where hive mind, where everyone's on the same page. There's like unity of thought. There's really barely any conflict between characters. Everyone's doing it in service of country and stuff. And a lot of fear in stuff like Invasion of the Body Snatchers is, oh, people who are different, they're among us. They are not like, they look like us, but they're different. They think differently. They, you know, so it is interesting to see how, like America and Americans in this kind of function is like, yep, we're all on the same team, same page. We all are thinking the same things always.
After all this, it was like, they just turned to the doctor and he was just like, this is the results of, you know, all this testing, and look what it is and where can it go from there. And then it like shows like these ants just burning. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a little hint, like the end is like just a little hint of maybe a bit of a subversive thought, where it's like, maybe we should consider the ramifications of what we're doing here, but that's kind of what we go out on.
I feel sorry at that point. I feel sorry for them. They didn't know. They were just doing what they do natural.
Yeah, like they show the queen ants and they don't even attack them. They just show there's like a shot of them and there's these two queen ants that are just like kind of cute.
Yeah, and they call them princess ants.
They're like, oh, the princesses. And that's why I think it's so funny when they light those two ants up, is because those are the two that they don't really attack anyone. They're just sitting there with their eggs.
Like, oh, poor babies.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you so much for joining us for this.
Yeah, tell us more about Horror Movies and Beyond. And
yes.
Like, I definitely want to send people your way. What do they have to look forward to heading over there?
Most of the time I'm doing Instagram and Twitter. However, I do have a YouTube, and new footage and stuff will be coming up very soon. I did get a new crew and and stuff like that, and then all of what's going on is happening. So it kind of put a lot of things, pushed things back. So that kind of is a damper on things, but at least it got me to cover some areas that I needed to cover. But definitely you can find me on Twitter at H Movies and Beyond. Instagram, I'm on there a lot. I do Instagram a lot. So it's horror movies and beyond. I'm the only thing that pops up with that. For my YouTube, I do have videos of my past interviews and things like that that were really fun, that happened, not too long ago, but they could definitely check those out, and more will be coming soon, hopefully.
Perfect.
So about it, I kind of wanted to do something a little different about reviewing movies. Not only do I want to go and interview people, but I started doing this thing where when I review a movie, I give you a little bit of a history of where it came from. So a little bit more of a backstory. For example, if it's about werewolves, if I'm doing Wolfman, obviously there have been many different Wolfmans, but then I would go into like the history of the lichen or something like that, where it came from, and kind of move it towards what's going on now. So just a little bit of a learning, because my appreciation of macabre and old stuff, and I wanted to bring it today where it's most important. So everything around us, especially horror movies or whatever you may be into, came from a past, an important part. And I learned that from when I interviewed Tom Holland, the director, Tom Holland. When I say Tom Holland, I'd be like, Spider-Man?
Yeah.
I had to like clarify that. When I had an opportunity to go to his house, when I sat there, he told me that horror movies, anything that has anything to do with that, is like the evil stepchild, the redheaded stepchild, or something like that. And I was like, why? And he said, because people don't take it seriously, and to me, I just find that that can't be true. That can't be what it is, because a lot of famous writers, directors, actors, producers came from horror films. They may have transitioned to drama and things like that, but they started, sweeping the floors at Trauma, you know what I'm saying? So it's very important to know that I think horror movies should be number one, because it's the only genre where you could just really throw out your creativity and it will hit someone. Versus others are kind of specific, but this one it's just so many subgenres with it. So I kind of wanted to take it to that kind of level a little bit.
Yeah,
I love that.
That's what I try to do with the podcast. So yeah, if you like the kind of history stuff we do on our show, please go check out Horror Movies and Beyond.
We'll be seeing more of each other. I want to have you back on for something.
Thank you for reading that article.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'll link to that too. It's such a good interview. Graveyard Shift Sisters is great. Like is like explicitly a site about black horror filmmakers, black female filmmakers, even more specifically, but they do such cool stuff. So check that out too. So thank you so much. Again, yeah, I'll link to everything. And all right, until next week, everyone.
Oh yeah. I'm James.
I'm Chelsea, and this is Ivotres, Horror Movies and Beyond. Woo!
Thank you, Ivotres.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.